Today is May 25th, 2020. It is Memorial Day. Next few minutes I'll be presenting to you Decision Making Part 3, which I title High Risk Opportunity. It seems to be relatively fitting since most of the people who have lost their life in the service of this country were placed in high risk situations. I want to remind you that the last presentation I gave, I presented this matrix where the rewards were on the vertical axes and the risks were on the horizontal axes. And most people want to be in a region where the rewards are high and the risks are low, and this is a very real prospect, especially if you consider all the intangible rewards that are possible in life. The place you want to avoid is where the rewards are low, whether they're intangible or tangible, when the risks are high. And then most of us spend our routine, dull life here handling the low rewards, low risk situations, the choices that we make. The difficult choice here is when the rewards are high and the risks are high. Notice the individual here with the big question mark. These are difficult to decide. That's the purpose of this presentation now, because I'm going to be talking about high risk opportunity. My main message here is that high risk must be compensated by high rewards. Otherwise, why take high risks? The issue for most of us is how high must the reward be relative to how low the risk must be. Most of the discussions dealing with high risk opportunities don't really fall in individual lives. Most of these decisions or choices take place in business, legal profession, investment, diplomacy, military. Just to give you a quick example, since today is Memorial Day, in December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. It turns out to be a disastrous decision. This was a high-risk opportunity that failed. What this basically means is that not every high-risk opportunity is going to turn out well. The decision-making under uncertainty is what we're dealing with a high-risk opportunity. It's gambling with the risk of loss. In order to make a decision like this intelligently, you must define the reasonable scenarios and relative probabilities. You need to consider what's the most likely outcome, what's the best outcome, what's the worst outcome. Assign probabilities. From that, you can calculate the reward to risk ratio, which is basically the expected reward divided by the expected loss. The higher this ratio, the more favorable the decision is to accept that decision. Before I go any further, I want to explain this chart that I have here. Again, this is very similar to the chart that I presented before. The vertical axis is all the returns, and on the horizontal axis are the risks. Notice that there's a green line drawn through here. If we're dealing with investments, if you were to call your investment broker, he could put you anywhere on this line with a diversified portfolio. The decision you would have to make as an investor is where on this line do you want to be? What is your risk tolerance? You could be at the extreme end where the returns are high and the risks are high. This is where the sharks and the gunslingers play. They believe in go big or go home. Oftentimes they deal with feast or famine, the ups and downs at the extremes. On the other end, there's a possibility of risk-free returns. You put your money in the CD. It's fairly safe, but you'll never get rich that way. Most people are going to pick something here in the middle. Also notice that the slope of the line here reveals the expected return divided by the expected loss ratio. And that as you go further out on the efficient frontier, the risks tend to drop, the rewards tend to drop, and the risks tend to go up. Most people invest in this region here. So where should you be? How should you decide high risk opportunities? This is proposition number 2. You have to define your risk tolerance level. You're risk adverse, then basically you prefer to avoid risks. You're going to be someplace in the lower end of the sufficient frontier. If you're risk seeking, or I should say reward seeking, you're looking for rewards at any cost, then you're probably up in this region here. If you're risk neutral, like most people, you probably prefer some balance, some reasonable levels of return with some acceptable levels of risk. Basically what you want to do, and this is my last message, you will get better long-term results avoiding the extremes. This is a region here for only a few die-hard individuals. Down here in this region, you don't get rich, but you can sleep at night. The best returns, the best results, the best decisions are basically here in the middle. So, that's all for now. Remember to stay positive. You'll be happier, healthier, and live longer.